All right, cool. Let's talk about it. Let's go be the market expert. And as we're looking at this, I want to start with just this quick infographic from NAR, and it's metro areas with the largest percent gain in existing single family home price in Q2. So obviously rear view facing data, which is most everything that we do, right? Like there's really no crystal balls and really hard to pull a lot of data in the moment. So a lot of the things that we do are rear view facing. And interesting enough, like if we look at this graph, I'll see if I can blow it up a little bit. I think what's changed a little bit about this, and I actually have Q1s, is it's no longer the metros that are like the least expensive. I think that's what we saw for a couple months, is that the metros that were growing the most in home price were really inexpensive homes in the grand scheme of things. Like we're talking well below even the median income or the median home price for the United States. I mean, everything's way lower for the most part than Colorado until you get to this Irvine, California, right here, where the prices increased 15%. They're at $1.4 million. But what has pretty much stayed the same is it is up in like the northeastern part of the United States. Yeah, obviously there's some outliers, right? Number 6, 3, 4, and even probably 1 and 8. I mean, that's probably more. We call it the Midwest. Yet, if we were to go back, and I actually do have last month's here, or last quarter's, I'm sorry. Let's see if I can blow this up. It wants to. It's thinking about it. If we look at last quarters in Q1, you can actually see like 232, 274. Like this was actually the theme that we were really seeing. Yeah, there's New Jersey's at 610, New Jersey again, 663. But for the most part, we were seeing big increases in these smaller metros where people were actually going to and really, going in and looking for least expensive properties as well as different qualities of life. And we've been seeing a lot of people, run from the coastlines, run from the hustle and bustle, and really just going into these smaller metros. And again, it gets a little bit interesting when we're talking about when they're jumping into these different price points. Again, like there's night and day difference from what we're seeing. We're 309, there's 186, so still about there. 496, 270, again, 700, 600, 500. I did round up on a lot of those. But we're seeing definitely a shift in the demographics of what is being purchased now. Now, what's also interesting is it says nearly 90% of all metros have a price gain in Q2 of 2024. So in the second quarter of 2024, 90%, and I think it's actually like 89, right? 89% is what it was. And which that is down from the previous quarter. So Q1 of 2024, that was 93% of all metros. But again, I think we have to keep in mind that like the biggest areas that we're talking about, and I get that Texas, one of the metros, in El Paso had an increase. We have to keep in mind that when we're talking about California, Texas, and Florida, they have an absurd amount of the population in the United States. And so when they're down, and I get, right, there's a little bit of a spark right there. In El Paso, there's a little bit of a spark. But when their metros are down, which they are, it has a huge swing on everything else because of just the giant population that they have. And we have to keep in mind that in 2021, and we look back, and if you guys were to even go through social media posts, we saw a lot of real estate agents going out and getting duly licensed in these states. And they were rushing to Texas. They were rushing to Florida because they were boom towns, right? They absolutely were. There was a lot going on to where people were jumping into these areas because there was a lot of movement. There was a lot of people that were going into Texas. There were a lot of people going into Florida. And when they were going into these areas, they were raising the prices. Builders were going down there and spending a lot of time and energy and money building residences. And what's interesting, if we were to go back and look, what we have now is truly very more so of like spec builds is kind of what I would think of these as. Like if we look in Colorado, the only real spec homes that we have are the model homes, right? Where they've gone through, they built the model, you go walk through, they got the sales staff in there, they're hanging out in the garage, right? They converted the garage into an office space. And that's what a real spec house looks like in Colorado for the most part, with really all the big builds. Well, in Texas and Florida, they went gangbusters. And they went down and they were building and they were building and they were building because it was the gold rush out there. Well, now it's slowed down. And a big reason why is interest rates, right? Interest rates is huge. Obviously, insurance is going up. And so when you're talking about living on the coast in Florida, it gets pretty unaffordable when you're talking about the high insurance rates that they have. And then you couple that with what Florida also had with like the condos that were being ill maintenance over those years. Like a lot of stuff has started to happen to where it's actually slowed down these big populations. So when we're looking at this and we're only talking about like 89%, I would say that the biggest reason why we're not any much higher than that is because Texas, Florida, California have so slowed down to this point that they're the ones that are dragging this from like the high 90s down to only 89%. So again, we're talking 199 out of 223 of the metro markets are up. And it's interesting, right? Says the record high home prices in most metro markets bring good and bad news. And right, this is from Lawrence Young. It's terrific news for homeowners who are moving ahead in wealth gains. However, it's difficult for those wanting to buy a home as the required income to qualify has roughly doubled from a few years ago. And we know this, right? We're dealing with this on a daily basis. We're going through, and we in Colorado, we have high home prices, right? When we're talking around, high fives to 600,000 is our average home price. And we're coupling that with 7% interest rates. We have seen the struggle. But that's where things get different for us, right? If we were to fast forward to today, we've been seeing low mortgage rates, right? Lower mortgage rates. And their question is, will housing demand go up? And so this is from Logan Mohtashami, and this is from the 10th. So I think it's Saturday. He got bored and wanted to write some articles. And we're going through, guys, and we have seen this. And I have a tab open that we'll dive into it soon and kind of look at it. But interest rates are going down. They did spike up yesterday, and we'll talk about that. But interest rates are going down. And when we're looking at this thing, the first thing that we're going to look at is purchase application data. Now, this is kind of a misleading number, but it's also good for us to know, because with the purchase application data going up, we're also seeing people going through and they're doing refis. And we have to keep in mind, there's a lot of people at these maybe eights, right? When we're looking at just where interest rates have been over the last 2 years, there are people at 8% interest rates. So they have some breathing room now, and it makes a whole lot of sense. While a lot of us are locked in, to 3% interest rates, there are people that are at 8, there are people that are at 7, there are people that are at 6, and going through, we need to be well aware of where interest rates are, even if it's just a care call. Right? We're reaching out to our past clients, right? And depending on who your lender is, your lender probably has some kind of refi that is baked in to their products that they have. Let's make some phone calls. Hey, did you see interest rates are going down? And see what they want to do. At the very least, like it's just a touch point to where we're taking some mind share. We're getting back into relationship with these people and going forward. So if we look at here, here's just your visualization of what the purchase application data looks like. And we got 2022, 2023, and 2024. 2024, we're still in the basement, right? Like we are living in the basement for purchase application data. There's not a whole lot of hands that have gone up that are super excited. Yet I think things are going to start changing here. We've seen interest rates lower on their own. The Fed has indicated at this point that next month there will be a rate cut, and there's no reason for them to back out of it. There really isn't. Everything is moving in the right direction, and there is absolutely zero reason for the Fed to pivot on this. So here we are living in the basement, 2024, not a whole lot of movement, right? If we're looking from January all the way to now, And again, we know that we're in a seasonal industry, and to where we wake up and we have this spring selling season and buying season. And right now we're in a typical season that's cooled off. Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of people on the sideline. There's a lot of people that have been waiting. And in the beginning, right, 2020, the end of 2022 and all of 2023, there's people on the sideline waiting for the housing market to crash. And like that was the messaging that they were getting and they were waiting for. And they just knew, right? All these housing crash bros, silver tsunami, Airbnb bust, like all these people were going through and like something's going to happen with the housing market, and it never happened. And it's not going to happen. Now, what we're seeing now is these interest rates are declining and people can actually start to breathe again. Their money's going to go a little bit further than it has over the last 2 years. And so when interest rates are going down, we just need to get back into relationship. That's going to be the biggest thing. Getting back into relationship with our people, being that real estate economist of choice, figuring out, at what interest rate, at what monthly payment, because in all reality, that's what they're thinking about. They're not really thinking about an interest rate. They're like, well, we need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this area, and we want our payment to be around X. So as we're watching what interest rates are happening, we're going to be able to assist them in a better capacity, in a fiduciary capacity, to be able to kind of navigate that with them. And inventory, right? So the best story for housing in 2024 has been the growth in housing inventory. And we're talking about the savagely unhealthy market of 2022. And really, again, 2022, what we saw was twofold. We saw the highest increase in interest rates that we ever saw as quickly as we saw, right? Not the highest they've ever been. It's just that they went up at an astronomical speed that it actually shocked a lot of people. And on the other side of that was we actually saw one of the largest housing purchase declines we've ever seen at the same time, like a housing crash, right? Like we really did, as far as people going out and buying houses. So we saw interest rates shoot up like this. And then we saw people going through and saying, okay, pump the brakes, I'm not buying houses. Like this was both simultaneously happening. And so when we're looking at it, and we know that we're going to base everything off 2019 data, right? 2019 data is the data that we like to look at because that's pre-COVID. And that's what we would consider more of a normal market. So anything's pre-2019. And so when we're looking at 2020, 2021, 2022, lots of weird stuff has gone on in those years, right? 2020, the world shut down and it got weird for a little while. 2021, we had super low interest rates. 2022, the second half, interest rates shot up. 2023, the interest rate stayed elevated. In 2024, we're finally being able to start breathing again, yet it's still not a normal market. This is by far not a normal market. But if we're looking at just the inventory, and we're going through what Logan wants to see, right? Is he wants to see growth anywhere between 11,000 and 17,000 homes per week. And he believes that based off of his data, that if we start getting to this, we're going to be in a place where we're going to be in more of a balanced market. So we're not going to be in a seller's market. We're not going to be in a buyer's market. We're going to be in a market where there's options. And those options are going to lead to both a win-win for both parties, and that we're going to be able to close some more deals. And so for the last 3 weeks, inventory growth has been healthy in his mind. And we're still not anywhere near what he wants to look at. So last week, and again, because everything's rear view facing data, while this is coming out on Saturday, it was the week prior, we saw 9,000 homes hit the market, right? And again, if something goes on the market and comes off really quickly, we're not going to be able to capture that data. Like this data actually has to sit for a little bit. So these are homes that are sitting. The week before that, we only saw 6,400 homes hit the market. And the week before that, so 2 weeks ago, 8,800 homes. So we're not having, and this is nationwide, we're not having a lot of houses hit the market. So when we're looking at our visual representation, this is what's cool. Like we're getting close to what we consider a normal market, right? 2019, this is where, these are our goals. Like anything that we want it to look like 2019 for everything. So we're looking, right? We had 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. We're passing all of those. This is a good sign. 41% more inventory right now than last year. That's huge, right? That's a huge number. We want this number to continue to climb because, right, when we're looking at this, we got two different ways our population is truly growing right now. We have people having babies, and those babies get older, and those babies get to be adults and they need houses, right? Like that's one way that our population keeps inclining to home ownership. And then the second one is that we have pretty laxed rules and regulations for immigration. And so we have people coming and migrating to the United States. And so with that, we need more housing. And so for us to be right where we are, right, we know that every year our population gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so for us to only be a little bit higher than we were over the last 4 years, that's still not awesome. And we're way lower than what we were 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And so we need to continue to have more inventory to purchase because there's more and more people in the United States needing houses. And so this is huge. Like this is what we all should be championing and cheering for is more inventory. But the issue that we're going to run into is that builders, and we were to look at building permit data, it's down. It's down across the board. Is we're not seeing as many multifamily homes being built. And the reason why is because of cost, right? The builders with the cost of money right now and the cost of labor is that they're not making any money. So they're slowing down on it. And then with threats of new legislation, right? And we can see this is that they're threatening some rent caps for these commercialized landlords. And what that's going to do is that's going to slow people down from wanting to build even more. So we're probably not going to ever really outgrow this inventory issue that we're in. And we do have an inventory issue. And this inventory issue is why our prices, right? Because this is the thing, guys, when we're talking about interest rates at 7%, and yet we're still seeing home prices increase, right? We all went to real estate school. We were all told that if we have high interest rates, we're going to have lower demand. And we have had lower demand. But yet it hasn't dropped the price because there's no inventory, right? Like that's the issue that we're all in. It all comes down to inventory and interest rates because no one believes that the American dream is dead, right? People still want home ownership. So as we're going through, we're not going to touch the 10-year yield or the treasury bond or anything like that. But the conclusion says, while we haven't seen a super positive run in the housing demand with lower rates, we have seen growth in refinancing. Again, another touch point. This is something that he's discussed in the latest podcast. And so for more purchase application data, it will be critical to watch for the rest of the year if mortgage rates stay below 7%. And I don't think that they're going to go anywhere. But what is interesting is we're seeing a rise in what they're calling these piggyback loans. And so it's saying that the data shows that the share of FHA-backed home purchases with a second lien grew more than 7 percentage points from June of 2022 to 2024. So in the grand scheme of things, we're talking 7% over a 2-year period, yet that's still a fairly large jump. And so we're not going to look into this, but I do want to call it out. What they're talking about is this right here. So my mind immediately goes to Chaffa. And so when we're looking at these Chaffa loans, one of the things for this is the second mortgage. They have two different ways, and one's the grant. And so with the grant, there's no repayment, right? Like there's no repayment. They can get up to, it says right here, up to $25,000 or 3% of your first mortgage. And your example is a $200,000 home. I don't know where you're getting a $200,000 home in Colorado, but in there, supposedly they know of at least one. That would be $6,000. Well, if we're looking at this, and so it's probably always going to be 25,000. That's the lesser, right, of 3% of anything that you're finding in Colorado. Up to the lesser 25,000 or 4% again. So here it is, $200,000. They're talking about an $8,000 dollar amount that you're going to be able to get. Well, if we're looking at this, this is one of the things that I think is scary is when we're seeing this, and we're talking about disadvantaged buyers going back to these loans. The issue isn't that they're getting the loan, right? That's not the issue at all. Like if they get this type of loan, it is what it is. The issue though is if they get this loan and the economy goes down, which it is, like we have been, one of the reasons why the inflation data is getting better is because the jobs market's been getting worse. Like that's the mechanics of this. And so when we're going through and we're looking at this, if people are starting to lose their jobs, and we're already talking about these disadvantaged buyers, but they're still advantaged enough to where they have enough money to go buy a house, right? We got to keep that in mind. Like they have enough money to go buy a house, so they don't have like a bad job, but yet they lose their job and they have these second mortgages and they have these other things that are happening. Firstly, they weren't a super well qualified buyer. And secondly, like these are the people that are at risk to put something in an issue because they are underwater. These are the underwater buyers. And while we only have like 4% of the entire population in the United States that is underwater, with more than 50% of all homes in the United States don't even have a mortgage. And out of the ones that do have a mortgage, I think it's close to 60% have more than 50% equity. So we're talking about a very, very small population when we're looking at this, right? We just said like 7% increase over 2 years. But in all reality, when we're talking about the amount of people that actually have a mortgage in the United States that are underwater, it's 4%. So this, as we're looking at it, these are the people that are at risk. These are the people that are at risk. They weren't well qualified to begin with. They went out and they got a second mortgage on their home, which immediately puts them underwater. And so if anything were to happen to them, this is where the bank could call something due. They're going to take hits on their credit, all kinds of different issues. And if this was a bigger number, then 2008 could be a reality, but we just need to be aware of this. This is not going to really cause any panic. So I told you guys that interest rates went up yesterday. A little bit of a spike, nothing huge, but they did go up. And it was because there was a lot of fear about their inflation report. They did not know what the inflation report was going to do. And so here's just today. It says 23 minutes ago, but I haven't refreshed. And we're looking through, it's a stock market today. Stock market jumps as key inflation data comes down. So inflation data came down. We had the spike yesterday, my baby spike up in interest rates because people were concerned about what the data was going to show. And so it spooked a lot of people. Well, the data came down, inflation's coming down. And again, double-edged sword because inflation's coming down because not many people are spending the money. There's people losing jobs. And so the dollar is getting stronger again. Like that's what this equates to. People losing their jobs, people stop spending as much money as they were. Employers aren't giving as many raises or spending more money to attract new talent. Like that's what this is. Then the dollar gets stronger because it goes further, right? So that's what we're looking at. All of this, right? We look through it, and since everything cooled, everything is doing better, right? There's the Trump interview, consumers on inflation, right? It's saying that they don't want to keep spending these higher prices. Inflation's going down. This is good. Like this is what we want to see. 3-year inflation outlook hits record low. This is a good sign, except for, again, double-edged sword, because this could put us into potentially a recession. And just so everyone on this call knows, like super anti-American to cheer for an recession. But with that being said, like recession doesn't hurt us as real estate agents. Like in all reality, it helps us. We're talking about, we deal with the highest ticket item that most Americans buy in their life in real estate. Highest ticket item. And so if we do go into a recession, that means that the Fed's going to do what they need to do to be able to stimulate the economy. Interest rates go down, and then more people start raising their hand because there's still affluent people out there that do believe in real estate. So while we don't want to cheer for that, at the exact same token, like as we're hearing this kind of stuff, it's not the end of the world. But here it is. So I did pull up 3 months because I just wanted it to be this bigger of a graph. And I wanted to show the bigger drop that we're seeing. But here we are. So we're talking on May 14th, 3 months back, we were at 7% for a conforming loan and 6.7 for FHA. Yesterday, we were at 6.5 and 6.3. So we've come down pretty good, but let's look at 1 month. So if we look at 1 month's data, right? So we're talking July 15th to the 12th. We're going through and we're doing this, and this is a pretty big drop, everyone. Like, do our consumers know? Are we making sure that our people are aware of where interest rates are today? Because I would assume that most people have no clue. And again, this could be a touch point for a refi. Yeah. This could be a retouch point for your people that have been sitting on the fence. Because again, we're going to see a rate cut next month, like we are. All signs pointing to rate cut at least 25 basis points. There's been some speculation of maybe 50. That would be astronomical. Who knows? There's way smarter people than me that can speculate on that. But 25 basis points, I mean, that's a big number. And so we're looking at that. That puts us down to 6.25 or very close to 6% for an FHA buyer. Right, when we're talking about these rate cuts. And so you can see the spike. It's not huge on this, but if we were to like change it a little bit, let's go. Like, still not a huge spike, but you can actually see it went up. Like, you can look at it right here. Conforming went up 13 basis points, and we went up on FHA 8 basis points. So nothing super big, but this went up just because of the fear for the inflation. I haven't looked at today's rates. I would be willing to bet they're down again. And so again, we just need to be making sure that we're going through, having the conversations with our people and just figuring out what makes sense for them as we're going through. So Altos data, let's look at it real quick. Let's talk about Arvada. So the median list price in Arvada, $735,000. We're staying about flat. Like, that's pretty much the flat dollar amount. But the price of new listings coming on, this has dipped a little bit and has been a little bit of a roller coaster at $700,000. So I like to look at this, right? We go 735 and we go 700,000, and we're going to compare it on to these average days on markets and median days on markets. But we see our price per square foot going up, right? It went up pretty significantly here. Right, we're talking $283 to $328 per square foot, and yet if we look at average days on market or the median days on market, this is where it gets a little bit weird. All right, so what I'm seeing here is if these home prices that are overpriced in Arvada, let's call it 735, an overpriced home, and comparatively speaking for what it should be. So 735, we're talking 60 days on market. That's going to be the average. So when we're having the conversation at the dining room table with our sellers about where they want to price their home and what's their motivation for selling, is it price? Do they need to be somewhere? Like, what are they looking for? Overpricing a home in our market is about a 2-month process, right? We're talking 60 days on average, right? We're taking the most amount of days, the least amount of days, we're adding them all up, we're dividing them by the total, and it's taken about 60 days on market if you overprice a home. Well, the median days on market, right? We're going through and we're taking out the outliers and we're working all the way into the middle. And we're saying this is the middle day on market for what we could typically see. So I would say that a $700,000 home right now is probably sitting on the market for about 42 days. When we're talking about the competition and we're having these conversations with our sellers and we're looking at the enemies in the area, right? We don't want to be looking at Zillow from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, unless there's really nothing in the area. We need to be looking at who's on the market now. That is our direct competition. And so when we're looking at this pricing, we're talking a difference of 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks. 3 weeks difference. We're talking 22 days here. So the difference on pricing the home right and pricing the home wrong is a 3-week penalty. And this is some of the data that we want to be using to make sure that we're having these conversations at the dining room table to better educate the people that we're in relationship with. Price decreases in Arvada 55%. That's astronomical. That really is. That's really high. Nationally speaking, on average, 1/3 of all homes take a price decrease over the course of a year. Arvada, we're at 55%. I think last year or last week for the nation, I think the nation was at like 48%. So still pretty high. We're at 55% of all the homes in Arvada are overpriced. And they're taking a price decrease. And that, again, we want to be the real estate economist of choice. And we're having these conversations. We cannot be letting our sellers dictate the home price. Yes, it's ultimately their decision, but they're paying us to be the expert. And we need to be going through and educating them on what is happening and what does it look like to put some mechanisms. Like, I get it. Like, there are times where it's like, God, they're going to go with somebody else if I don't do something with this price point, because the other real estate agent said they'd be able to give them $20,000 more than what I know it can sell for. Well, if we're going to be playing that game, because I get it, what does it look like to put mechanisms in place where X amount of showings or X amount of days on market automatically triggers a price change, right? Like, to where we actually just bake it into the contract, get their buy-in, and just do it. Price increases 2%. And again, this goes back to the inventory issue. When I look at a price increase, I'm thinking phase 2, phase 3 of new builds. And this number's going down. We're at 2%. So that's showing us that as we're looking at this, there are less new builds being built. Only 2% price increases. They're not flooding the market. They are keeping it tight. They are not building spec homes. What is happening is they're going through and you're walking into the sales office and you're saying, hey, I want this home on this lot. And they say, perfect, give us money and we'll start. So that's why we're not seeing big price increases, because we're not putting a bunch of spec homes on the market here. Relisted 8%, right? We're seeing this. This is going up. This will probably continue to go up for the next couple months or so, until interest rates start really coming down, because again, we have high price points, high interest rates, more discerning buyers that they're going through and they're making the executive decision that, you know what, after going through this inspection, this actually does not make sense for me. We even heard Bob's story, on Coffee Talk the other day, where someone backed out 3 days before. I mean, they left earnest money on the table, and now it's a relisted home, because even the ones that are thinking like, I'm going to do this, they're even backing out and just leaving money there because of what the monthly payment is going to be, and they're like, you know what, this just doesn't make sense for me. Inventory 273, median rent price is 3,100, and the action report they're giving is 46. And we can see this 46 is lower than last month. So still in a seller's market in Arvada specifically. And a lot of that's going to be because of inventory. Now, there are areas where the inventory is high, guys, and Arvada overall has low inventory. So we're still seeing this as a seller's market. It's just not as strong as a seller's market as it was in July. And I think if we were to go to prove any of this, we go into our website, right? And let's just go Arvada, and we'll go current location. Maybe. Thinking. Perfect. All right, cool. So here we are. We're looking at some stuff. This, I feel like, is the exact same house. It's just two different views, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's the same house. Yeah, 0.91 acres, 0.91 acres, Remax. I don't know why they put it in twice. Assuming one they put in for regular residential, and then one as commercial property. I'm thinking is what they did. So we're looking through price drop. We're seeing some homes that are sitting for a little bit. Here's a coming soon at 420. That looks like that's probably a steal. Anyone that's looking to do an investment property. 1.2 sitting. We're seeing price drops. Price drops coming soon at 445 on Kendall. Coming soon. We're seeing some inventory though. We're seeing some people start popping up, which is pretty exciting. But again, a lot of price drops. They just did this price drop 1 day ago. We're going to see more and more of this. So as interest rates are going down and we're seeing these different things that are happening, at what price point does some of this make sense, right? They dropped this thing down $7,000. Price drop $15,000. We're seeing some pretty astronomical shifts, and we're stigmatizing properties at this point. So this is when we're having this pricing conversation with our clients. Pricing matters because what is someone seeing when they say, oh, price drop $15,000 while they're super overpriced, right? And what happens to it at that point? This person, they just dropped it down 25,000. Here's one $61,000 price drop on a 1,000 or $1 million home. These are pretty astronomical numbers. This guy's just playing, right? $1,000 price drop just to see what it would do. But as we're looking at this, we just looked at all the data for the Altos data, right? We're seeing 55%. And I think we just looked at it like almost every one of these lines had at least one price drop, right? Like some of them have two. This is very, very representative of what we just saw. This one has 0, but there's 2 in the last one. So we're going through, we just need to make sure that we know that we're having the conversations. Home prices are still pretty elevated, right? Home prices are still pretty elevated. We're not having a lot of inventory hit the market. We're going through, and while this isn't a huge number, there is still people that are trying to qualify for the house by immediately going underwater. Not a huge population, but they are by going through like CHFA programs where they're getting the second mortgage, which has repayment penalties associated with it. Inflation data came back positive. Negative, which was a positive, which is good for us. Like as this is going down, this means that interest rates should go down. Yesterday's data did go up a little bit, but again, I think that we're in a better place. Like if we were to look, maybe we just go to the housing wire real quick. Yeah, there you go. It came down. So we're sitting at 668. Here we go. Let's open it up. Yeah, conforming, we're at 668, and FHA, we're at 645 today. Like decent numbers. Like as we're going through and we're having some conversations with some people, like these numbers are going down. So inflation came the right way. Arvada, we're still in a seller's market. Again, we want to use these tools when we're sitting down with people to show them the price of, or the price they pay for overpricing a home and what the competitors really truly look like. And then obviously, guys, as we're doing market research, like we can actually see this and we can actually get a feel of what is happening in these neighborhoods as we're going through with Christmas lights still on a home for $1.7 million, a price drop of 200K, right? Like we're able to go through and have these conversations with our people, and we just need to be watching these interest rates because this is going to drive a lot of activity in the next coming months, if not weeks, with the people that we're in relationship with.